on what the judges were doing or seeking to interfere with what might happen in the Supreme Court. It's a very simple one. We believe the state should pick up the bill for the Okuna cons. That's really the only issue we're seeking to have debate there, because the leader is absolutely right. It would be inappropriate to discuss the court case while it's going on. There was an issue raised here yesterday. It was an issue which I've raised many times myself, and it's about the question of reception of RTE abroad. I have a file 2 feet high with the RTE over the last 15 years at least, looking for shortwave, looking for longwave, looking for satellite, looking for RTE, which is the only national station in Europe which is encrypted on satellite, etc. And I take very much the reasons behind Senator Laura O'Muruku's point yesterday, but I don't agree with what his solution is. I think the solution is not to maintain medium wave. Medium wave is not a very good reception, and it doesn't need to be. Long wave is clearer. It carries all the stations that the leader mentioned about, like religious services, etc., on a Sunday morning, and it carries all the sports on the other times of the day when they're not being carried on FM. But here is the issue. Longwave is also clear. You can get longwave on your car radio from Edinburgh to Brussels almost. It's a much clearer reception. So what should we be doing here? We should be doing two things. Rather than directing our attention at RTE to maintain the medium wave, what we should be saying really is that the government, in its support for immigrant groups, should make available to immigrants all over the UK, provide from Ireland or through Ireland long wave radios. For people to listen. They will get clearer reception, and it will be a small cost, and it's something that we could do. Indeed, we might also look at the fact that broadband radio, which means they can listen to Radio Kerry, Radio Clare, or any of the local stations around Ireland just at the press of a button. Broadband radio it sounds complicated. It's actually easier to use than an ordinary radio, and they're now available for less than €100. So there are things. I think it's very important, the issue that was raised by Senator Laura O'Muruku, and I think he's right to say that people wouldn't be able to maybe change over to any new arrangement. I think that's how we should support immigrant communities in order to make a better reception available rather than try to maintain the current system that's there. And finally, Cairlig, I'd like to offer my congratulations this morning to the IFA and to the Minister for Agriculture, an issue which many of us in this House have raised over the last couple of months, the last couple of years in fact, and that's the question of Brazilian beef. It is a major victory for Irish agriculture, and I congratulate the lobbying powers of the IFA. It's a classic example where good lobbying groups can do something which is good for the country as well as good for themselves, and also to recognise that the Minister supported them all the way through and had said so when she was in here some months back. Thank you, Carly.
Senator
Thank you, Cahill. I'd like to raise the issue of the recent disturbances in Kenya, if I may. I was in Kenya on the day of the elections, and I witnessed at first hand the queues forming at many polling stations of citizens exercising their democratic right to vote. And naturally I was disturbed and saddened afterwards to see the consequential riots and disturbances in the area. As many senators will know, Kenya, up till these disturbances, was one of the most peaceful, stable and vibrant countries in the East Africa and African region. And indeed, many of our own aid agencies base themselves in Kenya, and from Kenya run their aid operations for places like Rwanda, Uganda, Tanzania and Kenya itself. So I am concerned about the potential impact that this is having on our aid agencies, and I wonder if the leader would ask the Minister for Overseas Development to come to the House and perhaps make a statement as to what the current state of affairs is in relation to our aid programme and our aid agencies who are based in Kenya. And furthermore, I see this morning that the head of the African Union is concerned about the potential outbreak of ethnic violence and genocide in the Kenyan region, and I wonder if the leader would pass on to our Minister for Foreign Affairs, Minister Eireaan, the need for the European Union to put as much pressure on as possible to try to resolve the situation in Kenya and East Africa. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Senator Daly.
Thank you, Cathaoirleach. I seek a debate in the House in relation to the tax right tactics of the HSE and their negotiations with the pharmacies around the country. If the HSE have their way, many pharmacies in rural Ireland will indeed be forced to close. The tax right tactics by the HSE have been exposed by the issuing of an interim contract on the 9th of January, despite the express statement by the Government and the Minister for Health that the dispute between the HSE and the Irish Pharmaceutical Union should be resolved by an independent body. the issuing of these contracts flies in the face of this government and Fianna Fáil's belief in social partnership, and I seek a debate in relation to this matter.
Decision.
Senator Coughlin.
I note that there are just 3 government bills, I think, on the order paper. One is at committee stage, one is at report stage, and the other one, I think it's intended by the Minister of Justice not to move it. So could the government, and I enlarge on the points made by Senator Fitzgerald, that we hear from the leader perhaps what bills it is intended to have in this House this session, because this is going to be a relatively short session, and perhaps the leader might at this stage, for the enlightenment of the House, let us know what it is intended by way of sitting times up to St. Patrick's Week and Easter week. Now, co-location hospitals have been mentioned, and the land of some of our hospitals and their proposed use, or altered proposed use now. But Minister Parliament in the last government did lay out a plan to provide a state inventory, an inventory of particularly surplus state properties, properties that were deemed to be surplus to requirements, having trawled through and examined the situation through all departments and the agencies under each department. I would like to ask the leader if such an inventory exists. Was it ever completed? We never actually heard. The leader might comment on that. And finally, might I, in regard to the matter raised by Senator Daly, I don't know precisely the detail he has in mind, but I would like to support him. I think that I'm thinking particularly of the smaller pharmacies throughout Ireland in provincial towns, the ones that we have on the side of streets that we would like to hold on the sides of our streets and not see them abolished or moved or whatever. There's talk about centres and so on. I would like to hear more detail of what the government has in mind, because I think, picking up on what the Senator has said, the matter is at the moment a total shambles, and the leader might comment on that too.
Thank you very much. Senator Murko.
Yesterday I did raise the issue regarding the intention of RTE to cease the medium wave service on RTE1 radio, and the point that I was making there was that it will particularly affect the older members of the Irish community in Britain, and I do appreciate the comments that have been made by Senator O'Toole in regard to the issue that has now arisen. I think it's important, though, to remember that I know Senator O'Toole is an optimist, but I think he knows full well that there won't be a big box of long-wave radios going over to Britain to solve the problem. And the logistics of trying to achieve that, I think, well, they're a bit far-fetched, really. And at the end of the day, really what's going to happen here, I believe, is that quietly this issue will be put to bed, and a whole generation, the older generation in Britain, will be totally ignored in this regard. Now, many of you here travel to Britain on a regular basis, and you've come in contact with the Irish community there. And if you visit their homes, and I've done so, it's like a little bit of Ireland in their home when you visit. And certainly, if they're used to receiving RTE1 radio in a particular way, they're not going to respond to the new technological changes that are there. I have already mentioned yesterday, I'm really talking about the older members of that community, and I know quite well that after the 1st of March we'll be hearing how these people have suffered, how their lifeline has actually been cut off. And I think that's a pity. And whatever amount of money is involved, and I don't believe it's great, to be honest, in maintaining this service, I genuinely